Okay, I read the book Hurt People by Sandra D. Wilson. And when I first seen it, it caught my eye because it just kind of reminded me of myself because I have those tendencies, and because it talked about, when I read the back of it, it talked about why and having hope and pondering and praying, and I was just trying to figure out how I could tie that into my life, and I just feel like I needed to read it because I could definitely use some advice on that. And now I'm just gonna say some points, like three major points that I used, that I found that I could that stood out the most to me and spoke to me personally. And one was binding shame, and she wrote, the quote was, "Shame is the soul deep belief that something is horribly wrong with me that is not wrong with anyone else in the entire world." And she also said, if I were really a strong Christian, this wouldn't hurt so much. And that she's talking about people and how we as Christians feel like when something happens, we're like, okay, well, if I just relied on God and if I love God so much, then it shouldn't be getting to me and stuff like that. But she said that, basically saying that we have to realize that we're imperfect and that we're not going to be perfect. And sometimes I have that problem because I'm like, okay, well, if why can't I just do this, or why can't I feel this type of way, and I shouldn't let these kind of things get to me. And if I really cared, and if I was really like a strong Christian and I had strong faith, then I wouldn't let some certain things get to me, and I wouldn't act strongly, because I have the tendency of hurting people or taking some things out on people whenever I get hurt, or like if somebody hurts me, I'll go reflect that on somebody else that doesn't deserve it. And then she also said, we feel we can and should be perfect, but that's not the case. Like God, we have to accept that God is the only perfect person, and that we're made in His image, but that doesn't mean we're gonna be perfect, and that we can't be perfect. Like, we can strive to be, but that's not gonna happen. And then another thing was ponder and pray. There was a really good prayer that she had in here, and she wrote, "Lord, help me to remember that my parents were imperfect, hurting people just like me. Remind me that lying is not loving, and make me willing to seek truth more than approval." When I was younger, I'm not gonna speak on that next. Okay, this prayer, pause to ponder and pray. She talked about how hurt by childhood fantasies and how children are often hurt by their parents, but it's not on purpose, and that we have to learn to forgive. And she talked, after each subject or paragraph, she put a prayer and something to think about, like 3 points up to think about. And that this one, "Lord, help me to be willing, or at least make me willing to be willing to receive whatever hidden parts, wisdom you want me to know. Teach me to trust you with my past as well as my present and my future." That really hit, because a lot of times I try to take things into my own hands instead of just letting God do His work. I try to be God and play God, and I have to try to apply that to my life. And then the last one was trusting relational safety and intimacy. And this one, she said, all human beings long for intimacy, but intimacy is not cheap. Genuine intimacy never develops unless both parties trust that the relationship is psychologically and physically safe. Although we don't always recognize it, trusting always is a choice. A lot of times I have problems trusting people, and half the time it's mostly because of things that I have done and what I know people can be capable of. And I just need to apply that in my relationships with my friends and my family relationships. And yep, that's it. So that's the book that I read. It was a good book, and I definitely recommend it to other people. But that's it.